I took a pause, took a moment and thought, actually, what else can I do to really enhance my application, my CV? And that's when I went to America. So I think it's okay to get rejected, because for me, I found that each rejection is a step closer to success, and everything will work out the way it's supposed to. But don't use that rejection to allow yourself to become down and disheartened and effectively lazy, because that's another thing. Rejection can sometimes make you give up. But you've got to use that rejection as a motivation to succeed.
Amos Madra.
Grace, a very warm welcome to you. Thank you so much for joining us. Busy, very busy person trying to secure this interview. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm currently a barrister at No. 5 Chambers in Birmingham, and I practice predominantly in personal injury and family law. And I've been at No. 5 for about 18 months. And before that, I was a barrister at a set in Devon in Plymouth. But yeah, I'm currently a personal injury and family barrister at No. 5 in Birmingham.
And this might sound like a silly question, but what is a barrister?
A barrister is basically the ones that wear the wig and gowns in court if you're in crime. I don't get to wear my wig and gown anymore because I no longer practice in crime. But yes, we're the ones that whenever something goes to court, we're the ones that take it from there. We stand up in court and represent clients, but we can also advise them, over paperwork and things like that. But effectively, you represent, and we only get involved when a matter needs to be litigated in court.
And there is a difference again, isn't there? Because from a lawyer, you move on to, onto being a barrister. Is it a progressive route? How does it work?
Yeah, so a lawyer is just the umbrella term for effectively anyone with a law degree. And then after you've got your law degree, you can then take two routes. You can be a solicitor or then be a barrister. And that's when it splits off then, because the training is different. So I then took the barrister route. So after I got my law degree, I had to do my BPTC, which is my bar professional training course. And it's effectively 1 year, like a barrister boot camp, really. They teach you how to cross-examine, how to conduct a trial, how to have conferences with clients, all the practical skills you need to be a barrister. And then you apply for pupillage, which is your 1 year within a chambers, a probationary year, where you take everything you've learned and you put it into practice. You shadow barristers around court for 6 months. And then the second 6 months, you're out there on your own doing your own cases, but you've just got that level of supervision and assistance if you need it. And then after that year, they say, yes, we'll take you. And then you're self-employed barrister and you're set. Or they'll say, thanks, but no thanks. And you're cast out into the cold. So that's the route.
And that's interesting. You said there's self-employment route as well. Is there the potential of becoming a partner in the future?
So barristers and solicitors slightly different. Solicitors, you're employed by the solicitor firm, and then you can go up the ranks that way. A barrister, you're self-employed, so that there aren't any partners in a chambers. You all are self-employed in your own right, but you just come under the umbrella of belonging to a chambers. So there aren't any partners at a chambers. It's slightly different.
Interesting. So tell me, when did you realise that this was the career for you?
I realised it was a career for me when I was 16, because I'd previously done a lot of acting on stage for all my childhood. And I was getting a bit bored with it, doing the same shows, 8 times a week in, week out. And I was watching a television show. I think it might have been Silk, or I can't remember, but I saw barristers. I saw them in wig and gown, arguing, sort of floating around court, representing their clients, and it just looked fascinating. And for me, it was that brilliant combination of being able to be live in a courtroom environment, which is not dissimilar from being on a stage, but then the academic stimulation of getting to argue about the law and really being able to impact people's lives and represent people. So all of those elements together, I then went on Google and Googled, how do you get to be a barrister? How do you become a barrister? And then took it from there.
So you took the initiative, didn't wait for a careers advisor to tell you how to get into it?
No, I remember taking my A-level options, and that's when I spoke to my school careers advisor and I said, I want to be a barrister. Do I need to do any specific A-levels? And they said I didn't, which is true. But they said, don't do a law degree because you'll find law really boring. You've never done law at school, because my school didn't allow law as a subject. They saw it as a soft subject, which baffles me, but there we are. And they said, you've never done law. Committing to do 3 years of law is a hell of a big commitment, and you'll probably find it really dry. Why don't you do an English or history degree and then do the law conversion course, which is then just 9 months of doing law? And I understood their point, but for me, you've got to get a law degree, whether it's a law degree or a GDL, the conversion course. I may as well just crack on and do it rather than wasting 3 years of my life doing a degree I'm not that interested in. So it was a bit of a risk. I took it and I thoroughly enjoyed doing a law degree. So it worked out well. And actually, I went on my old teacher / career advisor's podcast a few weeks ago, and she mentioned that whole, oh, I tried to get you to an English and history degree. And I said, I know, but I stuck to my guns and it worked out. So bit of a risk, but it paid off in the end.
Well, there we are. Obviously, you knowing exactly what you wanted to do and that determination to really stick with it and go for it. And you are very young. I think you're probably the youngest barrister I've come across.
Oh, thanks. I'm 26 now. I was called to the bar, so I passed all of my barrister exams when I was 21. So I've been doing it a couple of years now. But yeah, I mean, I was very lucky because not a lot of people know what they want to do at 16 years old. And so for me, it removed
all 21.
yeah, absolutely. And I was very fortunate because friends of mine that were going and doing degrees and still not knowing what they wanted to do, it's quite a daunting experience, especially then when you've graduated and you don't know where you want your life to lead. But for me, I was very fortunate that I found a career that interested me. I worked out how to get there, and I'm doing it now, and I'm having the best time. So I am very fortunate.
And I think what's interesting is the transferable skills from your acting and drama school background. You're able to transfer that into your field of work, and you could move those skills that you got somewhere else into this field. Talk to us about that.
I mean, absolutely. I'm a huge advocate for performing arts. I think it's a brilliant thing to do, whatever career you end up going into. For me, they are directly transferable skills. And I don't think I would be a barrister potentially without that background that I've come from. The skills that you need to be like in live performance in a stage environment, you need to be able to react to things appropriately and professionally when things go wrong, which they always do in live performance. But it's also the technical skills of, pace, projection, tone variation, all of that you need as a performer, but equally you need it in a courtroom, because ultimately I'm trying to convince a judge that what I'm saying is what he or she should agree with. And without that ability to really communicate well and effectively, you can't be that persuasive and you can't represent your client's best interests. So I've had loads of arguments with barristers when they've said drama's a waste of time, and quite simply, it's absolutely not. I say quite in a comedic way. As an actor, you're given lines, okay? As a barrister, you're not. They're off the top of your head or they're from your preparation. But you're advancing a case that you may or may not personally believe in. It doesn't matter what my personal thoughts are. That's my client and those are my instructions. Similarly, when I was an actor, I would say things that were ridiculous because that was what the character was saying. So they are completely transferable. But equally, it's about being able to communicate with different people. As a performer, you're in front of hundreds or thousands of people in the theatre, and you've got to be able to manage your nerves and be able to push them down so you can still go out and do your job. And I still get nervous in court in certain scenarios, but it's not beneficial to my client, to the judge, or even to myself if I let those nerves become overwhelming, and then I'm not doing the best interest of my client. So it's fantastic. I'm such a huge advocate, and I wouldn't be a barrister or be an effective barrister if I hadn't have had these 12 years of public speaking training that I've had. Yeah. So I'm a huge advocate for the arts.
And public speaking, TED Talks, nerves, how do they all fit in together? How do you overcome those nerves? How did you stand up there to do that TED Talk?
I was nervous before my TED Talk. I think it carries such a huge name, the weight of the name, and I wanted to do it justice. And also I want to be a positive role model and advocate for young barristers, especially young female barristers coming through the ranks and barristers that aren't from the traditional background. I always thought barristers had to be wealthy, related to other barristers, come from London, speak very well. And the reality is it's not, but it's quite unobtainable sometimes, because you feel like you've got to be a certain type of person or from a certain type of family to be a barrister. And so in the TED Talk, I really wanted to push that message that we need to make the bar more diverse and more accessible. I was nervous, but you've just got to push them down and crack on. And it's like being in court, it's like being on the theatre. I knew what I had to say, I've memorised my speech, and I just went and did it. And once you get into it, it's fine. But the first couple of minutes, I mean, my heart was in my throat, absolutely.
And can we expect you to be doing more talks like that in the future?
I'd absolutely love to, yeah. Any opportunity, absolutely. I think it's an important message to push as well, because not a lot of people at the junior end, really promote this diversity. And I think we all feel it, but it's having the opportunity to spread that message. So every opportunity I get to talk about diversity at the bar, encouraging people from different backgrounds, ethnicities, really makes that, because ultimately, as a barrister, you represent someone, and you need to be representative of the society that you represent. So when we look at a multicultural society, Birmingham, the metropolitan city, it's not that helpful if all the barristers are white, middle-aged and male. That's not helpful, because you don't have the appreciation of someone's background, someone's socioeconomic, circumstances. And that's why I think we need more diversity, so we can be more reflective of the society that we actually represent.
Yeah, absolutely. Where does this empathy come from, and this compassion and then want to help others come from?
That's a really interesting question. I don't know where it comes from. I love people. I love meeting people, speaking and getting to know other people. I don't think I necessarily had this empathy and compassion when I started, because I was just more selfishly interested by the wig, the gown, the public speaking. And then as you meet more people and you hear their stories, that's where more understanding, and people have gone through such hardships. And because of maybe their financial status or their race or their socioeconomic background, they're not given the voice that they need. And so it's being able to really represent and push someone's interests, and letting a court hear their struggles, their background, their needs. And it's sort of grown over time as I've met more and more people. There's this underbelly of society that you don't really know until you're part of this profession. But everyone has a story. So even on paper, a defendant may have committed a crime. But when you actually peel back the layers and you see the reasoning or their background or, circumstances that have led to this result, it's not as black and white as one may make out. And it's telling that story and allowing someone to have their voice heard that I absolutely love about this job. And I think it's an honour that I get to really put someone's message out there.
Yeah, and it's being objective as well, isn't it? Focusing on the case at hand.
Yeah, because clients do want to tell you everything. I'll represent someone that's been involved in a car crash 2 years ago, and they'll want to tell me about their marriage 20 years ago. They want to tell your whole story, and you've got to be able to control your client and say that, yeah, I'm listening to you, but let's just focus on this, and be very selective with a wealth of information that will come your way.
Yeah, really interesting. You seem to be very self-aware, knowing what you wanted to do from a very early age. Have you always been that sort of person? Do you spend time to reflect, think about your decisions, what you're doing, and also to, just to be purposeful, I suppose, in what you choose to do?
I think you have to. I think I have an obligation to be purposeful and self-aware, because it's such a weighty job that I do, and it is directly affecting and impacting someone's life, that it would be negligent or ignorant of me to not do that. In regards to my personal decisions, I've taken risks throughout my career that could have gone a bad way, and it could have impacted me negatively. But thankfully, every risk I've taken has led me to where I am today. And, I've always wanted to be a barrister at number 5 Chambers, specifically at number 5. And so the fact that I can, proudly say that I'm here now is just such a relief, because the risks I've taken have worked out for me, thankfully, but it could have been a lot different. And so, yes, I don't now really sit back and think about my decisions that I've taken, because it's all worked out exactly how I hoped it would. But in regards to the decisions I make in a case, absolutely, because you've got to be certain with certain tactics or certain things you advise, because you're impacting someone's life directly. And it's that I take the most seriously about my job, because you've got someone and their life is in your hands for that moment in court.
Yeah, with great powers comes great responsibilities. Indeed, as one comic book would say. You know, again, you're very ambitious. Would you say that there's still much more to come? What would be the pinnacle for you? Where would it be where you can say, I've reached my North Star? Have you got one?
Yeah, I mean, for now, I just want my practice to keep developing and just keep getting, you know, more and more cases and just build up an artillery of cases I've done. But long term, I'd love to be a silk one day and be a QC. Equally, I'd love to take the bench and become a judge one day. So, you know, these are far in the future. That is my long-term plan. But at the moment, you know, I take every day, you know, I don't take anything for granted. I'm grateful every day for where I am. And I don't rest on my laurels. Just because I'm at the chambers of my dreams and I'm practicing barrister, which I've always wanted to be, doesn't mean the job is done. You know, my North Star would be taking silk and becoming a judge. I don't think I'll rest until that happens. And then when I reach that, there'll probably be something else. So I don't know. But no.
Really interesting there. You know, you're talking about gratitude. Talk to me about your philosophy and why gratitude is important as well.
I'm very aware that I have been afforded opportunities in my life that someone else may not have achieved or been offered. You know, going back to opportunities of me being on stage. Yes, I had to go through the audition process, but equally it was right place, right time for a lot of that. And then you take the skills that I learned and the ability to be on stage, that then transferred into me wanting to be a barrister. So I worked harder. I was a paralegal for a while. And I used that time to really network with barristers in Birmingham to build that portfolio so I could reach out to them and ask for work experience with them so I could put that on my CV. You know, I then applied for pupillage, worked hard to get pupillage, then use those connections back to say, I've done pupillage, I've got tenancy, but I'd love to come to number 5 chambers. And so although, yes, I've absolutely worked hard and I'll continue to work hard, I'm also aware that the opportunities I've been afforded to meet people through work, through drama, has ultimately led me here. And there are so many people that are aspiring barristers. You know, it took me 3 years to get pupillage. I'm not ashamed to tell people it took me 3 years. It's a highly competitive thing. It's really hard to get. And it took me 3 years of grafting nonstop to get pupillage. Every decision I made in my life at that point was ultimately to get pupillage. You know, I got rejected the second year round. So I went to America for a year and worked as an attorney out there. And I did that just to make my application for pupillage stand out. So that although, yes, I've worked hard, I'm incredibly grateful for the opportunities I've been afforded. You know, taking back to my parents, the way they, you know, worked their hardest to provide opportunities for me is something I'm extremely grateful for. I've not come from a family where we had a lot of disposable income. And so it was sacrifices my parents made in order to put me in the best position for whatever career I chose to do long term. So I think gratitude's important because you can't take anything for granted. I'm 26 and I am living the life I've always wanted to live. You know, 10 years ago, I didn't think I was good enough, intelligent enough, or well connected enough to be a barrister. And now I'm a barrister at the chambers I've always dreamed to be a barrister at. So I'm incredibly grateful for that.
Absolutely. And, you know, let's just peel that back again. You know, again, you know, you're very humble. You're talking about the gratitude and, of course, having a reason to want to do good, to give back to your parents who've sacrificed so much for you. But the networking, the work experiences, the late nights, the taking a risk and traveling abroad into a foreign country, and still only 26, these are huge decisions. Talk to us about, you know, making those decisions and wanting to do that.
So the first year I applied for pupillage, I was fresh out of bar school. I'd had all the normal work experience that every other applicant I was against had. I applied, I got rejected. Fine. I thought, what can I do to make my application stand out? Because ultimately, everything I'd done, 800 other applicants have done. I wasn't special or unique in that aspect. And I've always loved going to America on holiday. I've always been fascinated by their judicial system, their legal system. It seems crazy to me out there. And I Googled law firms in Connecticut because Connecticut was the only state that I knew someone who lived there. And I thought, if things go wrong, at least I've got a contact that I can call in an emergency. So I Googled these law firms and I emailed a few law firms that looked quite interesting. I said, I'm a UK law student, just graduated, and I would love to come and work for your firm for however much or however little or for free. I just want the experience of working in Connecticut. And 2 firms got back to me and invited me out there, and I flew out a few weeks later. So I did a few months working as a personal injury advocate and a few months working as a criminal defence advocate out there. And I did this solely to make my pupillage application stand out. And when I reapplied the following year, because what's important to know is that for pupillage, you can only apply once a year. So once you've got rejected, you've got 12 months of nothing to fill. And when I applied the following year, every single interview was fascinating, my experience in America, because it did make me stand out. It showed I had a commitment to the profession because I've gone above and beyond for that experience. And it made me more understanding of our own legal system. And, you know, ultimately, and I say this to law students that I speak to now when I go and visit law schools, you want to create an interview that becomes a conversation, because then it's fluid, you have more control and it's less intimidating. And every interview, we spend a huge chunk of the interview talking about America. And it might be curious questions like, are they really chain gangs over there? Or, you know, what's it like? What the judge is like? Nothing to do with me being a potential barrister in the future, but just general interest. And that, to me, I think is the reason I ended up getting pupillage, because it was a real fantastic talking point and it was something I could talk to them for hours. So it allowed me to relax, be confident and talk the way I would talk in a courtroom without, you know, 7 barristers' eyes on me, grilling me left, right and centre. And it reduced the time so that there was less time for them to ask me the difficult questions. So yeah, it was fantastic and it worked out well.
And it builds your confidence as well, doesn't it? The experience that you get from it. What's really interesting is, you know, you'll hear people say there is no opportunities, there's nothing. You could have quite easily have done that, spent 12 months, you know, complaining and saying, why me? Woe was me. But you made it happen. You took control of the situation. Yeah,
well, I was working at the time in England. You know, I had a job and I thought I could do this job for another 12 months. I didn't hate it. It wasn't great. It was just that it was a normal job. And the risk was leaving that job and leaving that regular income, albeit it was a small income, for going to America with no guarantee that that job would allow me to come back. And they didn't allow me to come back. So, but that was a risk, but it paid off and was worth it in the end, because it was more of an investment to myself and my future career, taking that, you know, 6 months, 8 months where I didn't make any money in America, rather than making the steady income, but actually not progressing me any further long term.
And for someone listening, watching this, explain to them again why it's really important to invest in yourself.
Investing in yourself is the best thing you can ever do. And I'm not talking financially per se, I'm talking with time and experience. Because the thing I did in America, 8 months, didn't make any money, fine. But what it's allowed me to do now 3 or 4 years later is become a barrister and invest in my future career. So sometimes you've got to take a step back. You've got to, you know, forego certain things like money for the meantime, because you're working towards a bigger goal. So it's assessing the long-term goals and the short-term goals. Yes, my short-term goal at the time was to be as financially stable as possible. But my long-term goal was to be a barrister. So I had to forego the short-term goal to allow all of my attention and effort to go into the long-term goal.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the value of investing. Wow, Grace, it's been an absolute pleasure just talking to you and hearing your story and, you know, the experiences that you've gone through. And again, you know, the self-awareness, the gratitude, and putting yourself first because you knew that you were worth it. And also the empathy, thinking about others and putting, you know, doing what you can for other people as well. So much for us to learn from. We can listen to this over and over again and pick so many golden nuggets from this conversation. So finally, what would you like to say to the audience, and how can we connect with you?
So connecting with me, you can find me on social media platforms, Instagram and Twitter, under my handle, Grace Rose Gwynne. LinkedIn, I'm down as Grace Gwynne. I'm more than happy to talk to anyone via platforms. I have people messaging me daily, just general questions about being a barrister or how I got there, or advice to an aspiring barrister, or even something unrelated. You know, I want to be a corporate banker. What's your recommendations how I should get through this interview? You know, it doesn't really matter. My tip to anyone aspiring for anything is to work hard, take every opportunity that's presented to you, but also create opportunities for yourself. And it's that investment. So that's 3-step process that can be done simultaneously. Because what I found when I kept getting rejected was that I felt really downbeat, and I thought, I'm not good enough. What else can I give? If you don't want me now, there's nothing. I've given you everything I've got. But then I took a pause, took a moment, and thought, actually, no, what else can I do to really enhance my application, my CV? And that's when I went to America. So I think it's okay to get rejected, because for me, I found that each rejection is a step closer to success, and everything will work out the way it's supposed to. But don't use that rejection to allow yourself to become down and disheartened and effectively lazy, because that's another thing. Rejection can sometimes make you give up. But you've got to use that rejection as a motivation to succeed. So that would be my advice to anyone aspiring in any career field.
Absolutely incredible. Wow. Thank you very much. Thank you, Grace.
Thank you for having me.
If you want some amazing inspiration, check out the videos next to me, and I'll see you right there.